thumbs up if you need.
Oh, Hello, I'm Sarah Louise Ryan and welcome back to Love Lessons. I have a new guest for this segment of the show, which I'm very excited about. A little bit more lighthearted, I hope, but serious and then lighthearted, about believing, living again, starting over again after a breakup and a divorce. Welcome to Zina Arinze.
Thank you so much, Sarah Louise. It's such a pleasure to be here, the beginning of the year, even though we're talking about divorce, that's really sad and all that, but it's still a pleasure to be able to talk about how you can put a positive spin on starting again. So thank you very much for inviting me.
No, thank you so much for being here. So we've just been listening and chatting in with Tracy Rodford of Grosvenor Law, a divorce lawyer. What do you think about the current stats that we were talking about with divorce, those that filed on Christmas Day and 77, what was it, Tracy?
77.
77 on New Year's Day, not New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. What do you think about that?
Well, the thing is that when there are cracks in a relationship, sometimes people are in denial. They're thinking that, if we work harder, it's going to work, especially one side. Yeah. And then when you get to the Christmas tree, for instance, and you don't see a present that you were expecting, perhaps there was a diamond ring you saw. Many of us as women are a bit sneaky, so we kind of see receipts in our partners, pockets, and then we're expecting, oh, God, that's what we're going to get.
Takes me back to that scene in Love Actually.
Absolutely. And it actually happens.
It happens.
So you're thinking, okay, he's not going to get me a good present this year. He's going to get me a Hoover or Dyson, and you want something, and then suddenly you see this diamond necklace or a ring or something, like, yes, he's done well. And then you wait on Christmas Day, you open your presents and all that, you see a book. And you're still waiting, maybe you see a good book, but you're still waiting for the main thing. And so what normally happens after that is like, I've given him a chance, or I've given her a chance. It depends, it's not really gender specific. And it's like, no, I need to file now. I'm not taking it anymore. I've given up. She's had an affair, or he's had an affair, or they're not good with the children, or they don't give, whatever it is that your reason is. And people decide it's a new year, new me.
So Zina, something you were just saying really has taken me back to a time where I was writing about a breakup. In the breakup process for the person doing the breaking up, or the person, I guess, receiving the breakup, there are tests that we create as human beings to pass or fail. So it sounds to me like Christmas time is really poignant in creating those tests.
Absolutely.
To pass or fail.
Absolutely.
To continue the marriage.
Absolutely. And it's quite subliminal. You don't know you're doing it, but you're thinking, okay, I'm going to give her or him another chance. And suddenly, and sometimes it's something that you're not going to pass. It's inevitable. It's just like, being in a job and you've been given so many different warnings and you're going to lose your job, but you're thinking, so it's that sort of thing. You kind of know that this relationship's over, but you're making it, prolonging it, you're protracting it. And he or she just needs to do one little thing. It could be that your birth, like for instance, my birthday's in January. So it could be that present was waiting for you for January.
Yes.
It could be that it was bought in the sales or something, and you're waiting, you can't see it under the Christmas tree. And so you're like, no.
So actually it's almost like a last chance saloon.
Absolutely. Where 9 times out of 10, if there are cracks in the relationship, it's unlikely to, be able to move forward until you actually discuss it. Sometimes it takes the threat of divorce to get you back on track. Yeah. Sometimes not.
So Zina, what do you think are the options before, emotional options, and in terms of trying, before you go to somebody like Tracy, what would you recommend before finalising a marriage?
What I would recommend, and I do this with my clients, is, are you really sure you want a divorce? Because sometimes it might not be as bad as you feel. And that's not to sort of say, to put anyone down, but sometimes it's not really as bad as you feel. Do you actually want a divorce? And I kind of paint a picture, just like Tracy has mentioned earlier on, how long it will take you, the kind of things that are involved, if you have children in the marriage, how it will affect them. I always, tell people about the cost.
Mm.
You know, are you really emotionally ready for the cost? Because sometimes women specifically have unreasonable expectations, and they think, well, I've given him, you know, the better part of my days or my years, 20 years of my life. I should get the house, I should get this and that. And if that's, you know, correct, then you should. But it's not, it doesn't always work like that. You know, the courts look at so many different things. And then I always tell people, you need to decide, are you emotionally ready to pay for this? Because people don't, you know, you just feel that I'm going to divorce you, I'm going to divorce her. You don't actually think of anything else, you know, and sometimes you think of it as a way of revenge.
Yes.
Rather than, you know, the courts are there to help you get through the legal process, but they're not there to sort out, you know, what's happening emotionally. So they're not going to give you emotional justice.
Well, it's interesting that you should mention that, because earlier with Tracy, we were talking about, you know, the ego. It was my suggestion that the ego hinders the divorce proceedings, or if the divorce has been finalised and then they continue to bring up, you know, new cases against this and that and the other. What do you recommend as part of letting the ego go?
Personally, Sarah Louise, the question I always ask my clients is, if this marriage is really, really over, then saying that the other party's lying about this or lying about that is neither here or there, because it's costing you money. It's costing you money. I mean, your lawyers will help you. Tracy, other people, you know, that's what they do. They will help you as much as possible. But ideally, you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared. Ensure that you treat your divorce like a business. And it sounds a bit clinical, but that's what you need to do. It will cost you less money, and it will end in the shortest possible time, which, like Tracy mentioned, could be anything up to a year and even over. But what normally happens is that everyone gets vindictive, you talk, you argue. Oh, I can't imagine that she said that. She's such a liar. That's not what happened. He's such a this. Lawyers write letters. £350 is a letter, just a letter.
Yeah.
Minimal, you know, and that's not talking about other things, you know. And sometimes, because my, you know, my background is law as well, I would basically give you a pro forma of the kind of letter you might get in terms of instructing your, you know, your solicitor. This is what you'll be paying for emails, you'll be paying for whether it's a massive, you know, difficult case, or if you think that you're picking up the phone and, you know, speaking to your lawyer and you're saying, well, he did this and she did this, you will get a bill.
Yes.
For that. So, and that's what people don't understand.
What you're saying is it's an expensive process,
it is.
Financially and emotionally.
Absolutely.
Okay, so hypothetically speaking, Zena, I have just been through a divorce, let's say, or I'm going through one. I'm at that stage. What do you think about the no contact rule, about not contacting your ex-spouse to be, I guess, or ex-partner if, you know, if it's separation, or perhaps you haven't been married and you just a long-term relationship, which can be equally as traumatic. I mean, it doesn't have as much paperwork, but what do you think about the no contact rule in terms of moving forward?
I think it all depends on the, you know, the parties. If the parties are, I like the word that Tracy used earlier on in the earlier segment, if the parties are sensible, you know, and they've realised that then, you know, they can't get along together, but they're hoping that they can move on as friends. Then obviously, if you have children, if you have other things, you know, a business, some people have a business together. I have a particular client, they have a business together and they have a lot of money in that business. So it makes perfect sense for them to continue to contact each other, although they might have parameters in which that would happen. So it all depends on the parties. Ideally, no contact is good where it's going to be really traumatic for either party to keep, you know, speaking to each other. They get more and more unreasonable. If violence is, you know, threatened, especially if the children, particularly if there are children, if the children are being impacted in such a negative way because of the breakup. You know, law says that you know, it's the interest of the child that is paramount. And so, you know, more often than not, parents don't actually understand that. They're trying to score points with each other. So it's about, if it's going to impact the children, if there are children in the relationship, is it going to impact your business if you both have a business that is for instance, let's use, for argument's sake, let's use Posh Spice and David Beckham. They went through what they went through, but they still held it together.
Yeah.
You could talk about Beyonce and Jay-Z, much younger than me, but they went through and somehow, so it all depends on what you have to lose. You can even talk about Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, these are examples that we can see. You can talk about Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner. They're now divorced, but they had such a, I don't know how to, I don't know if it was a collaborative, but they had a judge that dealt with everything that they were dealing with, in a very amicable, collaborative way. And they both have contact with the children and they spent Christmas together. So it all depends on how the couples are, how vindictive they are, and how sensible they are. I really like that term, sensible. Yeah.
So you can be as smart as you like, but it's not about being smart. It's about being sensible.
Yes.
So, could you give me quick fire 3 top tips for emotionally dealing with divorce? If you could just have a quick.
Absolutely. First and foremost, you need to try and rediscover who you are, because when you're in a relationship, you're subsumed into one. It's 2.1. Everything's together. You need to. Who are you? Go on a road of self-discovery so that you know what your boundaries are. Number 2, don't cut yourself some slack. The relationship's over. That doesn't mean that your future, is over.
I love that.
And number 3. Go and learn something else. Get out of your comfort zone. It could be doing a new course. It could be fly around the world, wine tasting. It could be, cutting your hair. I don't know. Look for something that you can do, that you can say, yes, I did this. For instance, recently I went to Malawi. Never done that. Climbed a mountain. Never done that.
Fantastic.
So you could do something like that.
Is it because of the process of rediscovery in a way?
Yes, because sometimes people you're actually on a process of rediscovery for a long time. Personally, I've been divorced for years, but you just keep, reinventing yourself, as it were.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for those top tips.
Thank you so much.
Sarah Louise Ryan. I'm here with Zina Arinze, is that right?
Yeah, fantastic.
Business Believe and Live Again. And today we're talking about starting over again as a solo and what it means to file for divorce and, go through that whole process. We'll be back here on Love Lessons at Women's Radio Station. Tune in.
Cool. £450 a letter. I'm in the wrong game.
No, that was even basic.
I'm in the wrong game.
Yeah,
can get expensive.
Yes,
yeah. That was great.
Oh,
that was really fun.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Oh God!
There was a few questions that I knew you were going to give really long answers for, so I just kind of went.
I saw that.
I ask her this question,
I saw that. I said she knows me. She reads.
I know, but she's gonna.
Then I saw when she put the phone up. I'm like, okay.
Fun. We're still there.
Fantastic.
No, I don't.
So
it's so true. It really is true.
Worth looking into.
I think the big thing
that email
is the empowerment bit.
To Dave yet?
Especially if you've been a woman where
exactly,
divorced man all of his life, and he's had a career, and you've raised children, without complaints, and then you suddenly feel like, for example, if he's left, the marriage is over, the children have grown up, and you've got nothing.
What do I do next?
Yeah, what do I do next?
Yeah.
Who am I? And what's amazing, I see people who either rediscover themselves in a new career, or they find a new relationship, or they find a hobby. That's the bit that I think when you first approach divorce, you simply don't realise.
Tracy, in a moment when we jump on, will you just say what if you
can,
I'll do an intro because actually it's very relevant to my first question. My very first question is going to be about your reinvention retreats and kind of rediscovering you. And I do have probably about 7 questions, so kind of keep them like,
all right, okay. Just kind of glint when I'm kind of going on, just glint and I'll just
so when I did the intro before we started, I was like, I'm going to wave my hands when to stop, but if I'd have started waving my hands, you wouldn't have known. You would have been like, what's she doing?
Zina.
Sarah, are the headphones still bothering you?
No, they're fine.
They're fine, yeah, cool.
If I'm to speak, do I need headphones again now? No.
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
It's
more just for Sarah so she can hear her cue kind of thing. But obviously, if you want to hear the
makes it hot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just try to.
It does get hot here.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, ladies, this is great.
That's so fantastic.
I'm really enjoying it.
I've learned so much. I've got new friends. It's fantastic. So I didn't bring my phone.
I've got cards. Contact me.
Yeah, no.
Um,
30 seconds.
oh. Hello, welcome back to Love Lessons here on Women's Radio Station. I'm Sarah Louise Ryan. I'm here with Zina Arinze of Believe and Live Again. Today we're talking about starting again as a solo, post-divorce, post-breakup. It's unfortunately breakup season, and tomorrow is unfortunately National Divorce Day. So welcome back, Zina.
Thank you very much, Sarah Louise.
Earlier in the break, we accidentally got to chatting about something very interesting that I'd like to recap on with Tracy. Tracy, you were talking a little bit, if you could jump back in.
Yes, of course.
About starting again. What were you asking Zina?
Well, I was listening carefully to what Zina was saying. Obviously, we offer support to our clients, although we offer a slightly different service. And something that she'd mentioned about empowerment and people rediscovering themselves really struck a chord with me, because when people first approach me and they're ready to divorce and we go through the process of working out what they've got and how to divide it up, and it's all very stressful, they are very different people to the people that they are 2 or 3 years down the line. And that's the part of divorce that people don't see at the outset, which is so inspiring at the end. I've had a number of different clients over the years who sadly have been almost broken by the end of their marriage, and they perhaps weren't empowered, women mostly, at the outset of the divorce, but by the end they've maybe rediscovered a previously had career, or a new career, or a hobby, or they might have found a new, much more fulfilling relationship. And that's a really wonderful process for a lot of people to go through. And sometimes I try and tell people that might happen, but of course no one's ready to hear that at the point where they're grieving. But it really struck a chord with me when Zina was talking about some of the inspirational things that she's done and that other people have done, because I think there is a takeaway from divorce, which is you will live again, you will love again, and you will be happy again. It will just be a different life.
That's fantastic and so positive. Divorce, it, as you were saying before, Zina, it doesn't have to be the end. It can be the start of a very new beginning, a beginning that, albeit you probably didn't realize you were going to be going down a whole new path, but it can be a positive path. You just have to allow it to be so. Which, Zina, tell us about these wonderful reinvention retreats that you provide for women who want to feel empowered and want to gain their power and positive outlook again as a solo. Tell us.
Oh, fantastic. I just feel like I should just let Tracy continue. And then we need to swap,
No, it's such a lovely, panel, I guess, that we've got in today.
But just to sort of touch on that, what normally happens is that people are stuck. So you've gone through the process, you've gone through the legal process, you've got your decree absolute, and you're like, so what happens now? What do I do? And you hear all the grief cycle, which you mentioned earlier on, and you hear people say, don't worry, it's going to be all right. But you're thinking, what do they know? How's it going to be all right? I don't have my family, I don't have this, I don't have that. You set the table, 6 plates, 6 cups, 6 everything, and suddenly it's just yours. What do I do? So, the reinvention retreat, I call it the Reinvent You Day experience, and it normally holds in July. The next one's on July the 13th, 2019. Oh, we're in 2019.
Oh,
yes,
wow.
Yeah. And it's basically for women that are stuck.
Where is it? Where can people hear about it?
I'll share it later on social media, but all I'll say right now is save the date. Save
Fantastic.
the date, 13th of July, 2019. And basically, it's to help women that are stuck. So you could either be divorced, about to be divorced, you could be in a career that you don't like. For instance, like Tracy mentioned, you can start a new career or go back to the career that you had 20 years ago. and you don't know where to start. Where to start. Do I need to do a CV? Do I need to brush up on social media? What do I need to do? So it's about having a whole day, an immersive day where you sit down with other women, some divorced, some not, some widows, some different women from all walks of life, and sit down, hold yourself accountable, and say, well, this is what I need to. I want to do this. So how do I do this? This is what I need to do to get to this point. And it's with other women. So, you're not going to feel embarrassed, or you're not, and no situation is rubbish, as it were, or no situation is helpless, or, if you want to move forward, all you need to do is to make that decision. Once you make the decision, everything else falls into place. And so that day is for that. Do lots of positive exercises, lots of immersive exercises, talk about having positive habits, talking about where you are right now. And if you don't make the changes, and I kind of paint a negative picture of where you could be in 5 years' time if you haven't moved, and people are like, oh my God, I don't want to be like that.
So when you feel stuck, it can kind of feel like a stagnation.
Absolutely.
And nobody wants to feel, whether it's in their relationship, their career, in their health, they don't want to feel like they're stuck and not moving forward. Absolutely. And stagnating.
Absolutely.
Tell us, if you can. We don't want to know everything, because hopefully we'll be there.
Better.
Tell us what are the steps for finding your power, reinventing yourself. And
before the break, the first thing you need to do is that you need to actually acknowledge that you want to move forward. You need to acknowledge that. Do you want to stay in the past, or do you want to move to the future?
Yeah.
The second thing you need to do is to figure out what does that future look like to you? What does good look like to you?
Yeah.
I always advise that you journal when you're going through the divorce. Journal so that how your thoughts are. So the first thing I say is you need to make that decision that you want to move forward. Secondly, you need to figure out what good looks like to you. Another step you need to take is in terms of, and I said this earlier, cut yourself some slack. Don't use your divorce. It's an event in your life. So you're not a failure because your marriage didn't work out, or because your relationship didn't work out. That is an event. It didn't go well. Yeah. You have all opportunity to, build up on that. Also, what are the lessons that you've learned? It's really important. Sometimes we tend to say it was his fault, it was her fault, and that could be so. But what did you do, or what could you do differently in the next relationship, or in the next, phase of your life? What are the lessons, so that you don't take baggage into the next relationship, or the next business, or the next whatever it is that you're going to go on to?
And we are on love lessons, aren't we?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
So could you quickly tell us quickly if you can, because it's quite, it's got an emotional pull. Like, what is the hardest part of starting over after a breakup, whether it's divorce or not?
I think it's trust in yourself, trust in the process, trust in the fact that you're going to meet someone else. Even when you lose a job, for instance, are they going to like you? Is he going to like me? Am I going to be alone forever? Is he the right person? Am I making the right decision? It's all, about trust and forgiveness. Those are the two things. Forgiving the party, that's easy enough, but forgiving yourself, because sometimes you're like, oh, I was so stupid, I shouldn't have done that, I should have seen the signs, or why didn't I do this, or and people tend to find themselves wallowing in unforgiveness, self-unforgiveness for many, 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 many years.
And I was just thinking, probably you can relate, and I can too. I mean, never married, but definitely through a very large breakup. Did you ever find that you would rheumatize during your divorce, ladies?
Yeah.
Like, rheumatize different scenarios, not, like you said, not trusting yourself. And I was thinking earlier when you were talking about your retreats, that there is such a power in sharing your story rather than rheumatizing, especially when you're surrounded by women who are also sharing their story. It can kind of make you unstuck. Can you tell us a little bit, or maybe an example of someone that's found themselves unstuck through sharing their story and stopping from rheumatizing?
I will give you a fantastic example. There was a lady at the retreat last year, and she had been stuck. I mean, I've known her, I didn't know she was stuck, I just said, make sure you come, sort of thing. And she stood up and shared her story. And apparently she'd been stuck in a particular situation for 5 years.
Wow.
And she kept on doing the same thing over again. The people that she was meeting, the same sorts of people. And it was on the day that she, I did an exercise where I was talking about go back 5 years. Where were you 5 years ago? And she burst into tears because she was actually in the same place she was 5 years ago. And so she shared the story, and people were like, okay, so now she's unstuck, she's moving forward, and it's fantastic. So you're right. We tend to think about things that we could have done differently, and we keep, replaying scenarios in our mind, in our hearts, and sometimes without meaning to, we kind of walk that way. So you meet someone new, you walk in the way, well, I was rubbish. He told me that no one's going to love me. So you walk with that kind of mindset that, he's going to probably have an affair, or she's going to do this, or that job is, you walk in that kind of negative, mindset. But the second you start to say, well, that's over, it's happened, it is the past.
So if you do the same thing that you've always done, you'll get the same results that you've always got.
Absolutely.
So Zena, can you tell me, divorce being the final option in a couple, quick fire, what would you do to try and maintain that relationship before you divorce?
Communication. It's no one's a mind reader. Okay. No one's a mind reader. This is speaking to us as women. We tend to think that people are going to understand what's in your mind. No one's a mind. Communicate. Let your partner know what you like and what you don't like. Communicate. That's number one.
Tracy, can I ask you, what are your top 3 tips for people thinking about filing for divorce this January/year? Quick fire.
Okay, well, if you've really decided that that's it, you've been to counselling, it's over, you genuinely want to move forward, I think I'd go back to one of the points that I made earlier, which is be prepared, have your homework done, get your background done, understand a bit about your home finances, your income, your outgoings, so that when you approach your lawyer, you or mediator, you are able to give them a good picture, and that will save money, and it will save time, and it will save energy. Then I think my second tip would be have a look, go and meet a couple of different lawyers and mediators, because everybody will have a slightly different approach, and you want to choose someone that you're comfortable sharing some of the intimate details of your marriage and your life with. And then finally, my final tip would be, once you've decided you're getting divorced, try and focus on the fact that you are going to be divorced. Let go of the past. It's a business, as Zena once said. Do it pragmatically.
Thank you so much to Zena of Believe and Live Again, Tracy of Grosvenor Law, and I'm Sarah Louise Ryan, and this was Love Lessons. Almost didn't get to plug you one last time then.
Well done, fantastic.